Alrighty, so I'm going to walk you through how to update the BK117 with the dual GNS430s in the latest 10.3 version of XPlane. So in order to do this, the first thing I'd really suggest you do is watch this video by Eric Elliott. It's the XPlane 10 How to Add the New GPS 430 to the Carinado C90B. Much of what I'm going to be talking about here is covered in his video, and it's very parallel. So this is what I use to get my understanding of how everything works, and the steps I followed were pretty much verbatim from his video. I just modified the procedure a little bit for the BK117. So the first thing you're going to need is the Payware version of the BK117, which can be downloaded from xplane.org store. And you're going to need a copy of AC3D, which has a 14-day free trial. So it's more than enough to do this. And you're going to need to install the AC3D plugin for XPlane, which lets you open and modify XPlane files. Before we get started, you're also going to need a copy of XPlane 10. And we're going to go into your folder, and we're going to duplicate your aircraft file. And we're going to rename this to GNS430. And just to be specific, I'm going to name this dual GNS430 because there's a few steps that we got to do to make this work. So the first thing we're going to do, we've backed up our aircraft. We're going to open PlaneMaker in XPlane, and we're going to go into Systems, and we're going to update the aircraft, and we'll actually make sure that we're working with it opens the last aircraft I was working on, and you can see which one you're working on down here under Aircraft Helicopters, and you can see we're not working on our new version, we're working on the original. So it's important to open the right aircraft. So we're going to go to GNS430, and we'll open the fully featured one here, and you can confirm you're working on the right one now. So Aircraft Helicopters BK117 dual GNS430. So we need to update the GPS systems for the new XPlane 10 version. So all you need to do initially is pilot and copilot, use modern ARIC 424 capable, and same for the copilot. Nothing else in the systems needs to be touched. So we'll save that. And if you weren't concerned about the virtual cockpit or anything else, at this point you'd be done. That's it. The new GPS is up and running in the aircraft. When you click on it, the new one would pop out. But we're going to update the 3D cockpit as well to support the new GPS because the BK specifically has a couple customizations. So we'll go into 3D panel, and this is the 2D representation of all the panel components on your 3D cockpit. So you see here there's two Garmin GPSs. You've got your pilot and your copilot. The first thing I'm going to do is this section in the middle. When you click in the center of the panel file, there is a overlay. This is a trigger which generates the 3D animated pop-out of the GPS in front of your cockpit. Because the new GPS already does this in a 2D pop-out on its own without the animation, there's no point in duplicating it. It just clutters up your visual field of view. So I'm going to delete that from both of these. And I'm going to click on the file again and confirm that you've got unchecked copilot for the top one. And the second one needs to be checked as copilot so that you have two distinct GPSs. Now we're going to save this. And we'll go back and we'll file, save this. And I'm going to open the other aircraft. We'll save it again. And we'll do the same for the basic cockpit. So we go to Systems, Pilot and Copilot, update the GPS, and we go to Panel, make sure that's gone. And I've already deleted and this is already, it looks like they share the same panel, so it's just a script setting for it. So we'll save that. We'll save again, and we're going to launch. We'll just minimize that, and we'll launch XPlane. Okay, so we're going to open our new aircraft. Rad, weight, and balance. Okay, so we've got the modified aircraft file loaded now. And we'll just zoom in here so you can see. When I click on the center of the GPS, you have two separate GPSs that come up as 2D. You don't have the animated 3D pop-outs anymore. If I turn on the battery here, you'll see that it's the new high resolution and they're discrete. So I can have two different plans here, right? If I wanted to have one on that one, you'll see down here that there is a representation. And the buttons are independent of each. So that's working great. So the only thing we need to do now is have the 3D representation of the textures updated on this. So in order to do this, we got to do a few things. The first thing we need to do is update our panel file. So in order to create this panel file, we're going to need to actually enlarge it and then increase the panel size of these graphics. So what I'm going to do right now is, if you go back into the aircraft folder, into helicopters, and we're in the dual GNS430, you look in Cockpit 3D and panels. I'm going to delete that because that's not normally there to start with. But you'll see this is the panel file that XPlane PlaneMaker uses to place all the animated and scripted components in the 3D cockpit. So this is the rough backdrop of the basic graphics that you see. But what I need is, I need to first off make this bigger. But in order to make it bigger, I need to take a preview of this panel first. So we're going to do Control Alt Shift Space, and that key command will create this panel preview. And you can see it's showing an exact snapshot of what this is showing, plus all the overlay elements that XPlane uses. So we can minimize this. I'm going to turn off the avionics fan, and we need to enlarge this cockpit 3D file. So, and I'll show you the reason why. If we go back into PlaneMaker, if we go to 3D panel, these two graphics now that we've modified this and we've updated it, we actually need to take these files and put them somewhere up on this 3D panel file and have both of them, because we're going to have to relocate these textures. Both of these need to actually be a size down here of 4. But if I do that, they can't overlap. In order to do that, I need to enlarge this 3D panel file. And the only PNG file, this right now is 1024 by 1024 pixels. So what I want to do is make it 2048 by 2048 pixels. So in order to do that, we need to enlarge this. So in your 3D panel file, we need to open this PNG file in a photo editor. So I'm just going to use Photoshop here. Percent. And the other thing we need to do is we'll fill the background color the same color. So if you're using Photoshop, it's use the eyedropper, use a paint bucket, and fill it in. So now this image is 2048 by 2048 pixels. Okay? So now we're going to save this. Panel.png is saved. Now here's the thing. If I were to open this PNG file in PlaneMaker, so I go back, go 3D panel, you'll see now the gray area is huge. It's been updated. So now you've got all this space to work with on this larger PNG file. And since we need both of these to be size 4, we can do that now. And we can make sure that they don't overlap. So I'll put one down here and one over here, just for safety's sake. Or I can put one in the original area actually, because they're... What's going to happen is XPlane right now, the aircraft file is set to only use 1024 by 1024 of this area. So it will completely ignore all the texture that's, or any other objects that you place in this field. You have to go into AC3D and modify this file. So we've got everything laid out the way we want. Nothing's overlapping. There's still a pilot and copilot, so we can save this. And we'll save this again. And we'll do the same for the rad weight and balance, or wire protection kit one. And we'll go into 3D panel. And you'll see it's already using the new PNG file. We just need to update the layout. So we'll put this... Nope, okay. Something was catching the mouse like an event trigger. And we'll zoom out, set this to size 4, and we'll set the Copilot one to size 4. And we'll just do the same, roughly the same. And we'll have to check this in AC3D for both of them. So we'll save this. And actually, the best way to do this is we'll go to Panel 3D, and let's write down, so in my case I'm going to take a screenshot of this, the X and Y position of the primary one and the secondary one. And we'll save this so that they're exactly the same for both of these aircraft. So 3D panel. And let's look at that. So that was 496 by 505. All right, size 4. And 1530 by 1. That way, you only have to do the adjustment for the object file once. You're not. Well, you still have to do it for both, but at least the texture file is the same for both. So we'll save that. Save. And we'll minimize PlaneMaker. We go back into XPlane here, and now you're going to see these will disappear. So we go File, Aircraft, and we'll open the basic one to start. And you'll see now the textures are grayed out, right? It's the two areas that I deleted the texture from are gone. And if I turn the power on, the click area is gone because the texture is not there. All the buttons still work because that's a 3D model, but the GPS are not there. So if we go to the panel preview, you can see right now this is the old version. If I do the Control Alt Shift Space, it's going to update the panel preview, and look at that. So you've got a 1024 square pixel area that's been duplicated because it's not repeating the texture size properly. It knows that the panel preview is 2048 by 2048, but the aircraft file doesn't know to scale that file properly, so everything's all messed up. So we need to open this aircraft in AC3D. So you're going to have a blank workspace here, and we're going to go to File, Import, and we're going to find our aircraft. Make sure we're working on the new version. And we're going to work on the basic cockpit to start with. So open. You can see it's loading the panel preview that we just rendered out. And you'll zoom in here and you can see a 3D representation of the cockpit. Right? So these are all the objects. We want to click on, because there's different groups of objects in this panel, you want to select the object selection mode. So you'll see it's created a 3D selection group of the object. So the next thing we need to do is, well, you can see here what's happening. So if we go into Tools, Texture Coordinate Editor, you can see a 3D map. And this is the 2048 by 2048 texture. And originally, each object down here was mapped to, you can see where the old GPSs were on this map. And what it's looking for is this new GPS. But because our file is not the right size, the first thing we need to do, and this is where it differs from that video tutorial I mentioned originally, we'll grab that group of objects. We go to XPlane, go to Panel Properties, and we want to leave the left and bottom at 0 and 0. And this is why I expanded the texture file from the bottom left up to the right. It's because we want to have this to be 2048, the region right top at 2048 as well. And that will scale the textures file appropriately for this file. Now, here's where it's important you have your original backup of your aircraft, because as soon as I export this object, this cockpit 3D object, back into my aircraft folder, it will permanently rewrite the order of all the files that ND originally made this aircraft, because there is some custom coding. And one of the things I've come into is if you modify this, we look at the system right now, you see how you've got your red alt decisionite bug here. And if I go down here, it's fine. But as soon as I export it, the clickable area for this 3D object is going to start being a problem down here. And I haven't figured out how to fix that yet. That's beyond my ability. So it's something to consider. So we're going to export this. File, export, XPlane 8 object file. See, I didn't check my path. And yeah. Anyway, so the one that we're working on today, I'm really ticked, because that was a lot of work. Anyway, GNS430, basic aircraft file. I might have a backup. Save. Yes, this time we're replacing the right one. Okay. So now if we go into XPlane and we can open this aircraft again, you'll see still no change on the graphics because all we've done is scaled the texture size. So we're going to delete this panel preview, and you can see this is the old repeating quad texture. We'll delete that. And we're going to export a new panel preview, Control-Alt-Shift-Space. And you'll see now it's used the proper panel texture file. So we've got the full resolution 2048 pixel panel resolution file. So that's what we want. So now we can skip back over to Plane Maker. We can, let's see if we open this. May not even have to reopen it. We'll just go to Texture Coordinate Editor. And yeah, it's updated with the latest panel preview.png at 2048 by 2048. So now we just need to remap the texture of each GPS. So you're going to scroll in, make sure you're going select by surface, draw a box around the first GPS, and move it up to the pilot GPS, and draw a box around the second GPS, so where it used to be. Move it over to the right, and we're going to scale these up. So we select everything, hold down Control to equally scale it up from the center, and you want the button objects to roughly cover the textures itself, so that the center, and maybe a little smaller. So this allows the textures to map appropriately. You can see everything's kind of just shifting a little bit. The buttons themselves aren't too big of a deal. It's primarily the screen that you're worried about, but it is a good idea to have everything mapped. So you've got the primary GPS now. The screen is lined up around the center of the texture. So we'll do the same for this one here. Control, uniformly scale it out roughly. Focus on the screen first. Not bad. Move these down a little bit. Move this group over a little bit. Okay, so then we can zoom out and see they're roughly around the center of it. And we'll close this. And now in 3D you can actually see the textures have gone dark, which means that it's using the GPS coordinates. So we can go File, Export, Object File. Make sure you're in the right working folder, clean, dual GNS430. Choose your basic. I'm going to replace this one. And we'll go over to XPlane. We're going to reopen this aircraft again. And you can see that they're black textures now. So if I click on the center of these GPS units, you can see it's relocated the area. But here's what I was talking about earlier with the GPS, the RADALT bug. See how some of the texture locations, now it's part of the object file, which is a big text file. Some of the scripting has been messed up. So this is one of the catches. Some of the buttons have got problems, and I do have a bit of a fix for that. I'll talk about it in a minute here, but first off, let's turn the power on, which is now a little awkward to do. And you can see you've now got the high resolution 3D GPS. And if you're using anti-aliasing or anything, you can be a little more legible. But you have both GPSs independent of each other. You can see how it represents different pages on each, and they can both be independently bound. So you've got both now working. So that's how you update the GPS. And we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to let's open the RAD weight and balance, or RAD, sorry, wire protection. We'll zoom in here. We'll go to object selection, grab that object. We need to go to the panel properties and update this to 2048. 2048. File. Export object file. Make sure you're working on the RAD plus wire protection kit, radar one. And we're going to overwrite that one. Yes. Open it in XPlane. Confirm. And you can see the texture now needs to be remapped for the radar and wire protection kit version. So we'll go back into here. And we shouldn't have to update the panel preview because it's the same. So we'll just check that. Click on the object for that panel group. Tools, texture coordinate editor. And there we go. So same for the radar and wire protection kit. We'll grab this group, send it up here. Grab this group and send it over here. Select all of it, hold control. Scale it up. Looks pretty good. Same for this one. Scale it up. Okay, and we close this. And you can see it's gone black again. That's good. So now we're going to export. Object file, radar and wire protection kit. That's the one we're working on. Right folder, save, yes. Then we go back into XPlane, radar wire protection kit, reopen it. There you go. Now we've got both GPSs and the power's on. That is how you add the updated GPS.